Okay, this is just the maples, all the different maples. So remember the genus is Acer. We know maples are on the opposite list, right? So we have opposite stems here. If we look here, we can see we have the leaves are borne opposite each other on the stem. So we're going to do the shade trees and then the ornamental, right? So again, shade trees are just larger trees. They're going to get 25, 30 feet or more. Ornamental trees typically are 30 feet or less, okay? So we're going to start with what I call the four big maples, because these are the most common ones you find all over in landscapes. That's the silver maple, the red maple, the sugar, and the Norway maple, right? So the four, again, four big ones. So the way we separate them to start with, remember, everything's about breaking stuff into groups, smaller groups. The smaller the better, right? So for the four big maples, we look at the margin of the leaf, and we separate them by whether they are single or doubly serrated, right? So let's go back and review again. This is under leaf morphology, but if we look at this one, we have some big teeth, and actually these are your lobes, if you remember, right? We look at the veins, the midrib, and then we have these other ones. So there's 5 of those. So these are the lobes. So this is a 5-lobe leaf, and then it has a couple of random teeth here and there, right? This happens to be a Norway, so that's singly serrated. Here's a sugar. Again, we have 5 lobes. You can have 7. But those are the lobes with a few large teeth. So again, this is singly serrated. So the 2 maples with the single serrations are sugar maple and Norway. Again, we'll look at some other things to separate them. One good thing on sugar is that it has this really long acuminate tip, and this is actually a very good specimen because it's very common for those tips to brown in the summer, especially if you have a dry season. The Norway is still tipped, to acuminate, but it's not quite as long. A lot of times sugar maple will actually twist, they're so long. Leaf color, sometimes Norway maple is always really dark brown. This is a small leaf. I didn't get a great specimen, but they're always dark green, whereas sugar very often, even with a healthy tree, is lighter green. The wind is going to be my nemesis today. Okay, now here's the 2 then with doubly serrated margin. Silver, which is everywhere. It's a weed tree and it's junk, but it grows everywhere. People dig them out of gutters and take them home, right? And then red. Red is a very common native maple. You'll find all over in the woods in northwest Ohio. Okay, so let's look at the lobes first. So again, I look on the back. I got my 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 5 lobes. On those lobes, I have big teeth. There's a big tooth. And then if you look very closely, on that big tooth there are little teeth, right? Here's the little teeth on the big tooth. So, and again, that's the lobe, but still is doubly serrated. That's a large tooth with multiple teeth. Here's another one, right? And there's your doubly serrated margin. So these 2 have doubly serrated margins. That's the red and the sugar. So now how the heck do you separate those? There's a couple ways, okay? One is, the main one for me is the lobes and sinuses. Remember, lobes stick out, sinuses go in, right? You breathe in through your sinuses, your earlobes stick out. I don't know, whatever. So when I look at those, the silver maple is very common for those to be scooped out, right? Silver is scooped. It does not have teeth in there, if you notice. It's also very common for the middle lobe on silver to be very long and narrow here in these sinuses, and then get wider. Sometimes these will even be out that wide, right? Whereas if we compare that to the red, look at how angular those are, right? Very, very angular sinuses. I always say that you could almost stick one of these in there, right? You could never do that with the silver. So they're angled, and there are teeth in there compared to the scooped out ones on silver. The middle lobe is typically more pyramidal, right, or triangular, compared to silver starts out narrow and then gets wider. Okay, the black things on the silver, that's called tar spot. It's pretty common on silver maple. It's not a big deal, but it will get them. So red maple is Acer rubrum. Silver maple is Acer saccharinum. It's kind of a big long one. And then our sugar and our Norway. Sugar is Acer saccharum. We always just think that they make rum out of sugar maple or out of sugar cane, right? So Acer saccharum. And then the Norway is Acer platanoides. And I have to show you yet the stems because both the sugar and the Norway have really good buds in the late summer and fall to separate them. I'm going to show you that next. So those are our big four. I did want to show you, this is another one of the big four. It's one of the four we've already looked at. Does it look like any of them? I got a doubly serrated margin, big tooth with little teeth, right? I've got angled sinuses, a pyramidal terminal lobe. So it's in the red group, right? This is a cultivar called Red Sunset. Not unique, but what's different about this is it only has 3 lobes, right? Most all your native ones, when you find them growing in the woods, are like this. They're going to have 5. But the Red Sunset has 3 lobes. It's very common. One of the, probably the most common cultivar of red maple that's planted in landscapes is the Red Sunset maple. So you will see that oftentimes. All right, let's look at the buds really quick. So here's my sugar. I'm going to peel off these terminal buds. And this is one of these great. I love this one in particular, separating the sugar and the Norway, using buds, because it's also part of our naming to remember stuff. So if you look very closely, let's see if I'm on focus. I'm not. There we go. They're brown in color and they're very pointed. That kind of hurts to poke on the end. See all the scales? They're imbricate. That's a term for many scaled, right? Again, that's in the morphology stuff, but stem morphology. So they're brown, pointed, imbricate buds. To me, they look like, if you like ice cream, they look like a sugar cone. They're brown and pointed, and they look just like a sugar cone, and that's on sugar maple, right? Whereas the Norway maple has what we call noity buds. So let me strip these leaves off, get this out of the way. Get into focus here. So again, these are not brown. They're green, or sometimes they're burgundy color in the fall. They're not super pointed. They're very plump and fat. I call them noity. That's a made-up name. I just call them that because the scientific name is Acer platanoides, because they have the noity bud. So very different from sugar. Right, super different. This is great winter twig ID stuff because the buds tell you everything in the winter. I'm waiting for it. I think this specimen's too old and it's been too dry this summer. But another good characteristic of Norway is when you do pluck off a leaf earlier in the season, or when it's a little moister, you'll get a white milky sap coming out of the leaf scar. Actually, is that a little bit right there? It's really hard for me to see here. Not really. But you'll get white milky sap coming out of it. And that white milky sap is a bingo, because it's only one of the 4 big maples, any maple I know, that has the white milky sap. Okay? One other thing we can use in the summer or fall is the fruit. These are samaras. Remember, on maple they have samaras. Samara is defined as having a single seed with a papery appendage. Right? So sugar maple, they're shaped like a horseshoe, and they exist on the plant all summer long. They're going to start dropping off here pretty soon, but they're joined together like that. All maples have that double samara in that fashion, and so that's another